Hey, welcome to the 462nd episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Emilio Torres and Devin Ferguson. I'm Matt Enlow.
And I'm Oren Kaplan. And Emilio Torres, if you're listening, we owe you an email. We will respond to you. Longtime patron and listener.
Congrats on that picture, buddy. I'm excited.
Yeah. Today we have our buddy Eric McCasline on the podcast. He is an EP and partner at a new production company called Good Times. Their website is itsgoodtimes.com. I met him at art class. He used to be an EP there, and he's been in the industry for a very long time. Did he say he worked at MPC? Is that where he did?
MJC.
No, I think the Color House, MPC.
Oh, yeah, he did that.
And he's produced for Hungry Man, and he's definitely deep in the commercial world. And he also lived in the Palisades, so definitely very affected by the fires. Luckily, he is okay. Him and his family, their house is still standing, but will probably not be livable for a year. That's the crazy thing. It's like all these people that have basically their whole neighborhood is unlivable, but their house is still there and figuring out what to do. So we're very happy that we got to talk to him and that his company, it's goodtimes.com, is doing really well.
Along. Yeah.
And they have two directors on the roster, Bonnie and Allison, have been past guests on this podcast. So we'll talk a lot about them and just about the state of commercials. You know, I asked my usual question of like, how do you get to be on the roster and how do you win jobs? And yeah, Eric's the real businessman.
He's the genuine
/ creative.
Yeah.
So we touch on everything.
It was a great conversation and also reminded me of what I like about commercials. Like not just like, there's, like the work is good and, it's lucrative and all that, but like there's a swashbuckling mentality. There's like a fun rock and roll sort of vibe.
Yeah. A lot of piracy.
Yeah, sure. But, just like, hey, we're in and out. We're doing these different jobs. Like I've got stories for days about how, we used to do it and how we do it now and all the crazy stuff we've done. There's an adventure. There's a sense of adventure to it that like you get, especially in commercials and music videos, that like features you get, but like people are embedded for a longer time. Like, commercials, every couple of weeks, you're somewhere new, you're doing something different and crazy and working with a new crazy team of people. It's really fun. It's really a cool life.
Yeah. And the other thing we managed to do in this episode for the first time ever is we talked to Eric about MagicMind, but we did not plug the code that lets you save 45% off your order. So if you want to hear more if you want to try out MagicMind, which we will go into in depth with Eric in just a minute about the various substances we've tried out to be better at life, you can go to magicmind.com/shootitjan and you'll get 45% off. It's magicmind.com/shootitjan.
Jan, please shoot it.
And also, if you want to throw us a couple bucks like Emilio Torres did, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/justshootitpod. And we appreciate it. It just goes to keep this podcast alive and to keep you all entertained. 1.3 hours every Thursday for the last 10 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah. Also, someone was asking me about live shows the other day, and I said, we're working on it.
We are working on it.
Matt, what did you do today to further our accomplishment of having our next live show?
Oren, what did you do?
I talked to someone about it. I said, yes, we do live shows.
I'll get on it. It's on the books. Let's jump into it.
When I was a kid, I had to go to seminary at church, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before school started. So I had to get up at 4:30 or 5.
Sure.
So,
jazz band. Zero period. Yeah, same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're there early and you're like, so it trained me. And it really helped me in production because, plenty of my friends who were PAs with me would just be like, oh God, we got to get up at 4:30. And I'm like, yeah.
And you're like, yeah, of course. Yeah. You're behind.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
And I guess like all of a sudden people are saying that sleep is important. In fact, that's like the new thing of 2024, right? 2025.
And don't drink. Those are the two things now.
So red wine isn't good for your heart anymore?
No.
That's fully been a lie. That we've known that was a lie for a long time.
Right, but coffee makes you happy, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Do you know about MagicMind, Eric?
What is MagicMind?
They sponsor our podcast.
Okay.
and it's like a shot, like an energy shot. What would you say it's the equivalent of?
It's like a wheatgrass shot. If you ever are like at a fancy juice place, and they have like the little bottles, or you're at like a health food store, like a Whole Foods or an Erewhon. It's like probably, I'm gonna say like an ounce and a half, maybe.
What
2
is
ounces.
it? What's in it?
It's like kind of like athletic greens mixed with a 5-hour energy.
Yeah,
and some CBD oil, but it doesn't have any of those things in it.
There's no caffeine in it. It's all like cordyceps and like
ashwagandha, like mushrooms and lion's mane.
Yeah, it's
neurotropics or something
like this.
Yeah,
I went to school at Reed College, and it was at the time when kind of herbs were out there. So I'd always pretend to write for the Reed College Tribune or whatever it was and get them to send them to me when I was in college.
So you get like mushroom coffee and stuff, basically?
Yeah, a lot of that kind of stuff. And then there was also just smart drugs is what they were called, which were kind of like vitamins, but they were kind of weird concoctions of vitamins. And I tried it. It never seemed to really make me any smarter. Yeah. I'm not suggesting your sponsor would not make me smart.
I mean,
I'll have to try it.
Listeners at home know that I am a full convert.
No, Matt is fully in. And they kind of recommend you do it in the morning with your coffee or whatever, like around the same time. But the way I use it is a little more like right before. Like if I were in your position and I was like, it's 8:15 and I'm like so dead tired, I would just like slam one. And I've had like a super, super stressful week of production. I have a shoot that we basically decided this morning to push for a week because it's 100% exterior shoot at the beach and in a resort. And it's supposed to be after a year of no rain, the worst rain ever. And we had literally everyone was here. The entire client had flown out. The entire agency had flown out. We had our pre-production meeting in person today at the location.
At the beach?
Fittings done at a resort in Palos Verdes.
Oh, yeah. Down there, Terranea.
Yeah.
That's where everyone went from the Palisades in the fire.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah. Everyone's like, where are you? Oh, we're at Terranea too.
Really?
So it was like a party there for about a week before they
Did you go there?
No. I was like staggering around the valley, like going from Airbnb to Airbnb. And having 2 dogs just was a bummer, right?
Oh.
I kept saying to my kids, I was like, all right, the dogs are going to go to the farm for now.
What kind? Are they big dogs?
I have one big one and one dachshund, which is like, he's
like a wiener dog.
Yeah, he's a wiener dog. He's a pain in the ass. He's super smart, but he will not like.
They're willful. I like a wiener dog very much, but
especially with
strong-willed
mustard.
But but when you're changing houses, they're pooping places, and you're just like, what am I doing?
They're stressed out. You're stressed out.
They have new food because they haven't had their regular food. It was just a disaster. But we had some really great friends. We used to live here in the same neighborhood in Sherman Oaks. And they called us up actually out of the blue and said, hey, we have a house that we bought, but we haven't torn it down yet. And it's like this really cool Boogie Nights kind of house.
Like a fixer-upper.
It's like, it's like an 85-year-old woman went from here to assisted living and left her entire house. So I've got books from the 60s right up here. I've got a little office. I've got this cool, 60s office chair.
Well, to close the loop on the Magic Mind. So I've been really stressed because this client has been shooting in like Miami and Mexico and all these, tropical resort type places.
Are you the director in each one of the locales?
No, I actually pitched on this job last year and lost it. They shot in Miami. And I pitched on this job this year. And I won it, and I said, we should shoot in LA. Like, it's a great time to shoot in LA.
Yeah.
You can get Eric McCasline's favorite DPs are available. It was
totally.
a union shoot.
Brian Newman.
Yeah, all these, Brian Newman's not available, unfortunately, even with a push. But, we got beaches, we got all this stuff. And so everyone's like, okay, they're like, no director has ever pitched shooting this tropical thing in LA before, but Oren, we believe in you. And then they came here, and it's like, literally, the LA Times is like an atmospheric river is approaching. Expect the worst.
Yeah.
So I was stressed because I felt kind of responsible for bringing the whole shoot here. So before I go into the meeting, I did drink this Magic Mind, and it kind of like it does 2 things. It kind of like relaxes you a little bit. Like I think in like a way that like a CBD gummy would or something.
Yeah.
Even though there's no marijuana in it or anything.
Sure.
But it kind of also like focuses you and kind of energizes you. And I think just like you want to speak clearly and have like give good meaning.
Yeah.
as my old boss used to say.
Yeah.
It's kind of, that's how I use it. A little bit more precision
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah.
Right.
You're just like, I'm going to dial in. I think there's also something
Was
nice
there
about
a
the
weather
intent.
day as part of the bid?
Well, it's like 100% exterior stuff. And
is it 5 days? Is that
it's
right?
5 day. It's
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
moly.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
thanks. It's less.
Yeah, everyone, Oren is rich now.
It's less cool than it sounds because it's 3 days for the TV campaign, which is what I'm working on, and 2 days for social that are like literally shot on an iPhone vertically, but it's with the same cast and with the same sets. So there is a ton of art direction.
Are you directing those
No.
social pieces? Oh, I see. Okay. Got it.
Wow.
So it was supposed to be like 2 days of the TV at the resort, 1 day of the social at the resort, 1 day of TV at the beach, 1 day
Mhm.
social at the beach. So even actually the weather could have maybe worked for my spots, but the social is really important for the agency and the client. So
Sure.
Yeah, on average.
so we needed
on
5 days of great weather in a row, and we were guaranteed to have at
We only
least
had,
one
like-
horrible day.
Yeah,
if not
we only
3.
had like 8 months of that, like
Yeah.
until like a week and a half ago too.
I know, and
You
that's
know?
what everyone says. It's like, Oren, you can't blame yourself for the weather. And like, there's hurricanes in Miami, and there's
Yeah.
in Bali, it's like
Yeah,
miserable. Not Bali, in Brazil, which we looked at, it's like miserably hot right now. You know, it's the
Yeah.
middle of the summer, so
Yeah.
you know. But it is kind of it's a bummer because someone has to pay. Have you dealt with that before, Eric?
Yeah, but it's just a big producing job, right? It's like an understanding, giving the agency the option. Hey,
Mhm.
we can still shoot this. It's going to turn out pretty well. I think Oren can handle this one, and we will totally over prepare and we'll have big, huge, 20 buys over the talent
Right.
and that kind of thing. And then, but if you give them the out, then they almost invariably take it, right?
Mhm.
Because anytime
What's the out saying? Let's push the entire shoot by a
or
week or so.
if you want to be super safe, we can push it by 2 weeks, and I could be better. It's definitely we're going to have to deal with less weather.
Mhm.
It's all about giving people options, and they always seem to pick the more expensive option. I don't know if it's the way the brain is wired, but I just learned this under a master, Brian Latt, when he was a line producer and I was coming up as a coordinator and a PM. And he would always say to me, he'd go, okay, well, let's see if we can get this, overage. And it would be like maybe I shouldn't say this kind of shit because
But like real money.
like $100,000.
Yeah.
or just a
6
big
figures.
chunk of money for not that hard of it, right? Okay, listen, this quilt is going to be great as a green quilt. We can get a whole new quilt in here. It will cost $14,000 to get it in here tomorrow. And then, we'd go away and do it for much, much, much less. They'd always go, yeah, we got to have the blue quilt, or whatever it is. Right? That's all.
Yeah, it is. Commercials are so weird in how the creatives get so hung up on these details that will be on screen for, half a second. And sometimes, like as a director, I'm, part of these conversations, right? We're all like,
Mhm.
well, should we get the $14,000 quilt? We have to hire like 7 people tonight to knit it.
Yeah,
And then you're doing the shot and you know that this shot is better without the quilt, Right now, this shot has become about the quilt instead of Tom Brady, who is like standing there next to the quilt. And you're like,
To
we
me,
really need a close up, but you're killing yourself to include this thing in the shot.
It's more to me. I think more often it's like the green quilt is better. It does make it a little bit better, but like
The blue quilt.
the blue quilt is better than the green quilt. Okay, it is better. Is it like worth it for a team of people to stay up late and to like loom it and blah 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 blah? Is it going to move the needle in a meaningful way?
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. And as a director, it's hard because you're like, well, I like someone who's at bat for this creative. I'm working my ass off to make this as good as possible too. Do we see eye to eye on what things are going to make this better? Maybe, maybe not. And when it's the maybe not, that's when it's complicated because you're like, you're going to spend 5 figures on this quilt. And later on, I'm going to be like, hey, can I get another, a little bit of OT or something? And it's going to be a problem.
Well, but the thing is, you save the money from the quilt, right? The quilt is for that extra half
My
hour,
producers
right?
aren't never like, they're like, it'll be fine. And I'm like, tell me
Yeah.
why. Tell me
Yeah.
why it'll be fine.
No, but like I also came up with a certain kind of director that was so, and this was probably in the olden days too,
Sure.
when Frederick Bond or someone like that would go like, these are the books that need to be in the back. These are the books, not those books, these books.
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
just as a kind of a young, coordinator, PM, young producer, like trusting the creatives. And sometimes like I was on that Nikolai job, the balls, the Sony Bravia
Oh.
ones, right?
Oh, where they dropped the
Balls
rubber
in San
balls.
Francisco, right?
Sorry, yeah,
And he
just
was
to set the table, like literally we're talking like thousands and thousands of like bouncy balls. at the
hundreds
top
and
of-
hundreds of thousands.
like
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like an impossible number are
Yeah.
getting dropped on a super hilly street in San Francisco in like super slow-mo. This is an iconic spot. That's sick, dude. That's awesome.
And I actually only know about it because I just saw a video on Instagram like a couple weeks ago saying,
about
can you
how great it
believe that they just dropped all these balls
Wait.
and left it?
Eric, where were you when what house did that? Was that MJZ?
That was MJZ. It was
Yeah.
it was like his
Yeah.
third spot too,
Yeah, yeah.
Nikolai at MJZ.
So I was an
And-
intern at the Directors Bureau, which
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah.
across the street from MJZ,
Yeah.
actually their parent company.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe that's why it's like burnt into my
Well, I think it was right after that because he'd moved down. We were down where the office is now.
Okay.
Directors Bureau is up in Hollywood by
Sure.
HCAM. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wait.
yeah,
I always combine MJZ and HCAM. They're
yeah.
just three initials.
Yeah. So it was the frog on that one. Like, watch that spot again and look for a frog. And you're just like, that frog is special to me, right? Like that detail that was in the boards, like, and required a frog wrangler, right? Like,
Mhm.
was really cool, right? I was
Mhm.
like, and that's when I saw like kind of like genius level directors that were kind of had that visual mind that I really didn't have as a producer. Like, I can execute it. I can get, horses running alongside a key, like in the, even when the wranglers don't want to do it, like I can get a lot of things happening, but like, can I like come up with that idea?
Mhm.
Maybe not, but
Yeah.
like surrounding yourself with those kinds of people have always been like kind of the joy of commercials for me. Because you can do anything. You can just drop a bunch of balls in San Francisco. And they were finding those balls for like 5 years.
Sure,
They
sure.
are-
Yeah.
17 endangered species are gone now.
Yeah,
Because
Yeah.
I-
That's what kickstarted gentrification in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Is what happened.
all those
Exactly,
rubber
right.
buildings.
I gotta get away from these fucking balls.
Yeah.
I do think like the longer I direct, the more I come to the conclusion that like directing is like basically an exercise in prioritizing things,
Sure. Yeah.
Like this frog is really important. Yes, it's in one shot, but it is going to
Yeah.
make this memorable, or I mean, we always talk about how much time agencies spend on choosing the shoes of an actor that you'll never see on camera.
Yeah, of course.
Like that is not important, but I dream of the day, like you hear about like directors like Dave Meyers and, kind of people that are working on really, really big jobs that they just carry a techno crane, Steadicam, gimbal, drone every single day. And they're like,
Yeah.
they don't know what they need. So they'll take them all.
Remind
and for
me
me,
that-
it's like, okay, well, if we drop one day of the techno, can we get the Steadicam?
Sure. Yeah. They're like, okay, I need the frog. And
Yeah.
I guess I have to have the quilt. So then okay, sure. I guess it's a lock off now instead of a Steadicam shot.
Yeah. I think there is that. That is kind of aspirational to get to whatever Dave Meyers level in terms of like, okay, he doesn't get out of bed for less than $450,000 a day or whatever. But at the same time, there's so many good directors that like can do that on 110 or
Sure. Can
80.
decide what they want instead. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And run around with a small crew and get exactly what they need. And that's the genius of like a good director is kind of understanding when to say no. And that's the Joe Pica style, because that's when I came up, right? He would have everything, 4 camera bodies. And they were very similar bodies. Like, he owned it all. He rented it all
Right.
to his own company.
And he's
Did
the
all that-
DP also, right? He's a director.
Yeah,
DP.
he would DP most everything that he did, So Yeah, watching those guys, I didn't really, I like someone who has to like make choices, you know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's better. But it is wonderful when you have a drone. Oh yeah, shit. Oh my God, we didn't even think about that. You know, we could shoot this from above, and then you can cut from the behind them to the side to the drone shot. You know, and then you're like, look at what we're giving editorial today. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's crazy how there were no drones really like
No,
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Helicopters, and they were so expensive. I remember going into MJZ and going to Brian
And
like,
dangerous.
Hey, oh yeah, dangerous. I took a ride on one helicopter, and then I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't
Not
need
worth
to
the
be in
risk.
here.
Yeah.
You know.
You
And
have
then
to remember, like a dude's like literally like leaning outside of the helicopter on like a
absolutely
crazy long lens trying to get this shot as well. Like,
yeah, and trying to balance and like all that kind of stuff on those like long like shots along the like Pacific Ocean. You know, there's that like mountain that you cut around like halfway up to Santa Barbara that I shot at probably 50 times. And it was all helicopters. And it was like, it was nuts, you know, like how much they was spending. And in fact, sometimes like you come into the job and you go, this is back in the day, right? And go, hey, Brian, I noticed there's a helicopter in this budget. And they're like, oh, that went away. I go, well, there's $112,000 pad here for like 2 days of helicopter you got, you know, like, he's like, yeah.
Yeah. I'm waiting for those budgets.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Will it come back? I don't know.
I don't think so. It's so tough. I can't even bid a job that's like less than 250 or 275 in LA because I just did a scrubbing bubbles job, right? It was hidden camera. There was lots of cameras. It was really fun. We had a great time, but I was just like, I used to be able to whip out a budget for 150, 175, and then just, you know, there's so many like factors now.
Let's dig in on that a little bit because, you know, I think we've had this conversation a couple times before, and I've always had EPs tell me that like locations were really the thing that ended up being the tipping point for why we shoot out of town so much, right?
Yeah.
And that it would be cheaper to travel, agency and me and everybody else, just locations alone. And then look, you're saving maybe a little bit on crew, maybe crew's a little cheaper elsewhere. But you tell us, actually, as a person who's got his finger on the pulse.
Well, here's the sad thing, right? Like, because I love healthcare, right?
Sure.
I love, you know, like I want everyone to have really robust healthcare. And I have to say that like shooting in Georgia or shooting in Austin where there's not the unions, and I'm not a union buster at all. Like I'm typically, I try any job that I can shoot union, like the last job, I shoot union. But like it's just so hard sometimes. I got 140 to shoot one day. And you're like, you know, what am I going to do? Like it's like 34% P&W now. Like when you're bidding, like that's just regular like rates when it used to be 22, like when I was coming up, you know, 24, you know, at 28 at the start of the year, you know, because it goes down over the course of the year. But yeah, it's just really tricky. I mean, obviously locations, like I remember being in Portland as a young PA and we'd be like, hey, we want to shoot a Bissell commercial at your house. And they're like, oh my gosh, my house could be in a television commercial. And it's like, yeah, would you like that? Yeah,
you pay us.
Yeah, $500. You know, like stuff like that. And then, you know, LA.
So like how much
everyone's
for just like a regular suburban house in Los Angeles nowadays? How much would that cost?
Oh, that's the funny thing. Well, there is one thing now with PeerSpace, right?
Sure.
So you can get really lucky. And sometimes you have to be kind of looking for both at the same time. Use your Andrew Christensen or whatever out there, like scouting for you, like in the real traditional way, talking to cast location. But those houses are all $15,000 big, right? And then there's some off, you know, brand ones you can get for 6 or 7 or 8, you know, but they're not perfect, you know, and they're certainly not used to shooting there a lot. And then PeerSpace, sometimes you can come up with a house for $2,500 or something like this, you know, but then you know, somebody damages some stuff, you know,
sure.
They're just not used to it. So there's Like you bring in a crew of 65 to a pure space house, and it's like, it can go really wrong.
That's the problem. I mean, I'm finding like we're, trying to shoot at beaches, and, all LA City won't give you a permit for a beach right now. And so we're kind of looking at, there's this amazing beach called Sycamore Cove, like right north of Malibu. And they only have like 30 parking spots in their parking lot. And we need like, 90 or something, or 80, whatever it is. So now we have to rent a parking
in vans
spot. Yeah. And van and
union. To drive the vans.
Do we need Teamsters, I think, maybe to drive
you definitely need Teamsters when I was a kid coming up, it was all,
right.
But now it's all Teamsters. Like you can't
nothing spikes my blood pressure like driving a pass van. Truly.
That's where I started.
Yeah. So it starts becoming, like this free, quote unquote, free location for the state is like $15,000 because there's, you'll have 100 people there. We need like 4 park rangers to support you.
Sure.
Yeah.
You have to pay those park rangers.
Also, the permitting has gotten really expensive in Los Angeles. Like I used to be able to put in $1,200 for my permit. I just did an actual the other day, and the permit was almost $3,000. Right. And so it's kind of hard because, there's so much runaway production, but the state of California hasn't made it easy for us to keep it in Los Angeles and California in general. And so you go to this, even Illinois right now has a really good incentive. And so a lot of those agencies, and there's great agencies in Chicago, FCB and Leo Burnett, like all those agencies, a lot of them are shooting in Chicago now and taking that 25% of your overall budget tax credit, right? And it's like, holy moly, that's a chunk of money when you're talking about $1 million spot or, a couple 3-day shoot, for $1 million. So I was
at a Super Bowl party last night, and a friend of mine that he works in politics, not in film, he said, "Hey, do you think Gavin Newsom, like this whole raising the film credit is going to make a big difference? It's going to help bring production back?" And I was like, I mean, that stuff isn't really going to affect me, but what would be awesome is if permits were free, like that would help a lot, especially these kind of like, $50,000 to $350,000 a day type of shoots, where the difference between $0 and $9,000 worth of permits makes a difference,
Makes a lot of difference.
I think there is something also about like, at this point, it's normalized to go out of town. Like if you're on a TV show, you're in Vancouver, you're in Atlanta, you're all over the place, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Like development still happens here, and like a lot of companies are based here, directors are based here, DPs are based here, but like we're traveling all the time, right? And I think that even if it doesn't affect us directly, Oren, if you're shooting commercials all the time, just like the vibe of people shooting in LA and like crews being here and like getting their reps in more, I think will have a halo effect.
Yeah. Because if you're a key grip, when I was coming up, there's 40 key grips that had 10 tons, right? And they were always working, and so
sleeping
like
in their trucks, like double dipping. You're like, what are you doing, dude?
And they had, because they were renting to themselves on the production, and like they had a whole 10-ton worth of gear. I couldn't imagine if I was a key grip trying to build out a 10-ton now, because half the year it's sitting there, right? It's not, the kind of big commercials, because also tastes have changed quite honestly. When I was a kid coming up, it was like we were trying to make Lawrence of Arabia for toilet paper commercials, right?
For sure.
And it was just like, okay, and then look like for a tight shot. Yeah, something like that. And it was like the production value. No, we got to shoot it,
Sure.
This way. And
this is how it looks like a real commercial, or we'll take it seriously, or
exactly.
Whatever. Yeah.
There was that. And now because of YouTube, I think, like the aesthetic kind of aim is much different. I don't think it's better or worse or whatever. It's just,
worse.
You're just not trying to make that like,
you're trying to be relatable, right? Like we're
it's
emulating
real and authentic. And this is what it would look like on TikTok or whatever.
Right.
And that's like your iPhone, So like,
Yeah.
it's a different aesthetic. And I don't think you can really complain about it. Obviously, sometimes I'm with like at AICP or whatever, I'm with like the old time EPs and they're like lamenting the state of, advertising. And they're like, I'll get cornered by one of them and they'll be like, well, 10 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? They're spending as much or more than advertisers, marketers are spending. You've got to be more nimble and you have to have your buckets in different places and they're smaller buckets,
And also, if you're lamenting the industry from 10 years ago, that means that you are pitching creative directors who were 14, 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
That's not strictly true, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, who were in college when you're describing the heyday and literally didn't own a TV and didn't care about any of the commercials that
you hear
their
like,
parents were watching,
no one's like trying to make 1984, that commercial, the Apple commercial anymore,
Yeah.
And I don't think they should be, right?
So that brings us maybe to the big question of the day, right?
Yeah.
You started a company, right?
Yeah.
You were just saying it's just been about a year.
Yeah, just past a year.
Good times.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about it and why start a company now? What's the ethos? What's the goal? And like maybe, take into consideration the way that the advertising is changing.
There are production companies without rosters. You have a roster.
Yeah,
like
good question.
I know we have a lot of freelance director listeners that are always curious whether they should join a roster or not. Can you just tell us a little bit about,
Let's get to that, but let's set the table first, right? Tell us what Good Times is.
Well, it's funny, Oren, we've got to touch on that afterwards because the freelance directors can sometimes be the most infuriating about it. But, okay, we started a year ago. We're both Corwin and I were at art class where you are now, Oren. There was some shakeup. They were changing directions a little bit. And I came from a very kind of traditional production background. And I came in and the thought was, okay, we're going to graduate, whatever. I mean, like what they were doing there to something that was a little different. But I looked around and after a year, I was like, oh, I think this is working for what they want it to do. And that's not really what I wanted it to do. And a couple directors that were there, Bonnie and Allison, were like, wherever you go, we're going to go. And so, as weird and like, it's always hard to like leave a place. But Bonnie and Allison are about the most lovely people in the world. So,
they've been on this podcast.
Oh, well, they should. I mean, Ed, so they are.
They wear matching jumpsuits on set. We get it. That's cool. They're cool.
They did it on their last shoot.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're thinking outside the box.
Yeah, we should get them back on breaking news.
No, so they were basically our first directors. And then, of course, you could reach around and grab all the people you produced for in the past and that you've done big, cool projects with. And you put out your shingle or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is we have had business the whole time, largely because of them. They're very steady. They were on an Amazon show at the end of last year. And I was like, when are they coming back?
Hey, what show?
They're writing on a show.
Oh, really?
Like, I can't even tell you the title. I was just so angry with them for like disappearing for months. So they were gone. But we found, a good mix of folks and we tried to be very clear with whoever we're signing. And in that we say, we want it to work for you, but obviously it has to work for us as well. Mm-hmm. So where we do a bit of and we don't really do this exactly, but we do a bit of a Moneyballl thing, right? So if you're working, we that we're the right fit for you. If you're not working, you're probably not the right fit for us, or we don't understand how to sell you in such a way. So getting great reps was our first thing.
Wait, how is that a Moneyballl thing?
Well, it's just like
kind of just looking at the numbers as a guideline
using
for staffing.
The numbers and as data to
Eric's just eating apples all the time.
Is that what Brad Pitt does?
Apples throughout that whole movie. Yeah,
Okay.
he loves eating an apple. It's like good business. I get it. Yeah. There's like, if you Google it, there's montages of Brad Pitt eating apples, actually.
But anyway, so we're just kind of like, okay, we're not right for everybody. And over the course of even the first year, people have left and we've brought on new people, and we're just trying to find the baddest 10 directors that can just be part of the Good Times gang, right?
Wait, does a duo knock off 2 spots?
No, that's one.
One paycheck. That's their prerogative how they split it up.
Yeah.
A good one gets 70%.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That is interesting. I mean, people talk to us a lot about whether they should sign and what company they should sign with and all that stuff. And I always just think like, if whatever company knows how to sell you, you know?
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's usually 9 out of 10 times related to how excited they are about you.
Yeah.
On occasion, it's not. On occasion, they can be not that excited about you, but you're an easy sell.
Yeah. I think, well, if the
Vice versa, they're super excited about you, but they can't sell you.
I think it's sometimes you hear that. I think oftentimes you hear that. And it's frankly pretty understandable. Like there's that thing of like, oh, there's the honeymoon period. We're excited to talk to you. You know, we love your reel. We're getting you out there. Reps are excited about you. And then it doesn't click, right?
Yeah.
That happens, right?
Sure.
Mhm.
I don't know that people are like, well, I think this person will book a lot, but their work sucks, but whatever. You know, like no one, like you'd get excited if you could sell them, you know?
They have to make the decision on whether the person is Good Times or not, right?
Sure.
Because we've had the opportunity to sign a couple people that we have not signed because we're like, okay, because we try to do some diligence on people and we know enough people in the industry that we can say, well, tell me a little bit about this director or whatever.
Are they really good times or not?
Yeah, because it is very important to us, you know, getting to set and enjoying yourself and enjoying the group of people. That's certainly because I'm ADD enough to like, that's why I ended up in commercials, because a commercial is a 1 month period of time where you're really in with a group of people. And if you like that group of people and they like you, sometimes you can do that for years on end. Like as I was coming up in production, like that was, but like there's always a this, right?
Yeah,
You know?
a rising wave. You know, it's funny. I wonder, Oren, we haven't talked about this ever, but like, it's such an intense relationship. Like you're with your producer, you're like it's working. And then honestly, by the shoot day, like give or take, like they're in the motorhome or they're back in Village or whatever.
Yeah.
You're like thick as thieves, and then all of a sudden, and then you wrap, and then you're like, oh, I guess we're done. Maybe you get an edit session with them or whatever, and they're on to the next thing.
Yeah, usually they're the line producer. Yeah, is like not involved in post even.
Yeah, and you're like, oh,
yeah, like
what happened? You know,
I'm working with Kelly Christensen now. He says hello,
Tell him
Eric, and Kevin Brady says, I talk to him like 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the job ends,
all hours of the day,
I'll never talk to him again.
Until the next one, right?
Yeah.
I like to not do that, quite honestly. Like, so some directors don't really want to be talked to, right? Like there are,
sure.
It's like me, I'm kind of like this on an airplane. Like I don't want to sit next to the AD or like the director when we're flying to Uruguay or something like this. Like, that's kind of my style. But like on my iChats, I'm pretty much chatting with everyone that's on the roster all the time, right?
Cool.
Except for maybe 1 or 2 of the directors that are on our roster. And that's how I kind of rate the good time. So, so also one other like a big thing, and this is something Corwin and I both do, is we have the prospective director meet our reps, right? And we do a bit of it's not an interview by any means, but it is like, hey, can you talk to Rob, or whatever?
Right. Because your reps need to sell the directors. Can you just, for our listeners that aren't so familiar with commercial in the commercial world, can you explain to them what a rep is? We did have Nikki Weiss on the podcast
she's awesome.
A while ago, but I think we can use a quick refresher.
Yeah, so a rep has a region, whether it's typically East Coast, Midwest, and West Coast, and they have all the coverage of all the agencies and kind of direct to brand typically out of that region. And so they really are your eyes and ears for creative projects. I mean, like I have maybe 10 or 15 good relationships that I've made over the years of head of productions or, creative directors. But like, honestly, it's more what they see out there in the world. Oh yeah, there's a new, scrubbing bubbles job coming up, and it's going to be the creative is a hidden camera. Okay, well, we have the right person for that, right? On our roster. So they really know, and it's kind of their job to know everything that's happening in their region. And so they have to sell you essentially, because like we have Doug Steven in the Midwest, and he's fucking amazing. Like I know that if I can convince Doug that he should pitch a director that's on our roster to a creative director that might be a FCB or whatever, I have a really good shot of, because he doesn't put himself out there for, he's not just this car salesman that's out like, whatever it sticks. I'm just always selling, he really,
his pitches count.
Yeah. And he connects with a lot of our directors, and he like really champions them. And that's, so you can champion everyone that's on your roster, but having those other 3 regions is super valuable, right? And like, I don't know much about the East Coast, to be honest. Like, I didn't do production there. I probably shot 5 or 10 jobs in New York City ever in my whole career. So I'm not really that versed that I don't really know the agencies, although I've been out there with Tara Averill and like those kind of really high end reps is like when I've had them at different companies. But, their understanding of North Carolina and, what's going on in Miami right now is like something that's just beyond you as an EP.
Sure.
To know that, and that's their job.
Right. And you're just busy with so many other things. It's like,
oh yeah,
you're only one person, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're 3 now. So we've got
3 EP.
Coral and myself and Bernadette, who's our kind of newest EP at Good Times. And we all kind of have our own strengths and backgrounds in history and relationships with folks. And it's all like, you just try to broaden your kind of exposure out there. And reps are a huge part of that.
And so the $1 million question, I think, for a director that wants to be working in commercials, like, what do you see? What do you think makes a director easy to pitch, to call Doug Stevens up, your Midwest rep, and say, hey, you should have Matt Enlow pitch on this, or you should have Oren Camp? Like, what is it? A reel? Is it a personality? Is it?
It's definitely real. No, it's 100% real. Like, right? Because that's what they've done, and that's what they are. Like, and you can treat the hell out of something and, like, oh, we're going to, shoot from space or whatever. But like, it's really what's on the reel. Like, that's what you're going to get. And and graduating people out of their kind of comfort, like say Bonnie and Allison, right? They started as primarily social kind of directors that you could pull a $50,000, $60,000 job out at, but that's not where they wanted to be forever. And so that was part of the draw, is like, okay, how do we level up your reel? And that's really what's going to sell you. It's like getting like I said, I've told you this, Oren, it's like the DP, it's the colorist, it's the editor. Like there's one, our director who I love at our class. And I was like, who's your editor? And he's like, I don't care. I was like, what? Mm-hmm. That's an opportunity to make your work better. Mm-hmm. And having that relationship is like, it's also partly my responsibility to introduce you to people and like-minded folks that can elevate your work for sure. And I think that you just got to pay attention to all that little stuff. But I think it's real as much as anything. And like comedy right now is killing everything. So it's like your visual style and comedy is really all of it. So like tabletop is tough because so much of tabletop, like the Irv Blitz kind of tabletop is kind of gone a little bit. I mean, there is still
Irv Blitz, legendary tabletop director that would
but like now every tabletop board I see has kids skateboarding down the street, and then he skates into Applebee's or whatever, and then he's like, and they go, well, does he have the skateboarding stuff?
Sure.
And then do you have the tabletop stuff, none. It's like a unicorn, right? Who has that? But more and more
Tom
people
Morris, maybe.
I mean, Oren Kaplan, we did a good amount of Popeye's tabletop last year.
Yeah, no, but
I
that's
was
it.
like, do I need to spec some like pizza? Do I need to like just do some cheese
I
pulls?
wouldn't do
pulls,
pizza just because
cheese pulls are big.
Yeah.
You know,
But I'll tell you right now, because we pushed our shoot, we lost our DP, and in showing the client and the agency new DPs, I'm like literally showed them the DP, the Avengers, and they're like, yeah, but can he shoot like food?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I assume he could shoot food. And they're like, well, we need to show her the client like some food shots.
Yeah. I also like, there is sometimes
You get
sometimes no. Sometimes they can't, like.
no, it is true. But every once in a while you go like, hey, to the agents or whatever, does he have food? Oh yeah, he started as a food DP.
Sure.
Like, that's happened to us last month or in December on Starbucks. And because Shelley really wanted a specific DP, but they said that very thing. Where's the food? Where's the food?
Mm-hmm.
So, as the EP, you do your diligence and you're like, okay, let's see. And we just miraculously, he had a big food reel.
Like, I think agency, they'd rather put like this amazing music video, Billie Eilish music video than
100%.
Chicken nuggets being dipped in mustard.
But there's not a lot of commercials that look like Billie Eilish commercial, the video.
Yeah, it is true.
And also shooting chicken nuggets, there's an art to it. But I get why people don't want to put chicken nuggets on their website.
Yeah.
Oren, I think the other big question that people have is a little bit more elusive. It's how do you find your directors? And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably not from them emailing you their reel. Do you know what I mean? Like how, like thinking through your lineup right now, give us a few anecdotes of like, okay, you worked with Bonnie and Allison already. Great. What was the next person you signed? How'd you find them?
Oliver Davies.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a director that was at the Mill, and I did this massive project at the Mill that was on a volume stage when I was back producing, and he was the creative director on it. And I just knew he did really just beautiful arty work, right? And so it's like that's what you do. You kind of grab your buddies, right? Mm-hmm. It's like most of the people that are on our site are either friends, people we produced for, or people that, like, if you look at Alice Gu, Mike Montenegro, who's a great producer, had worked with her and said, you should have her over at Good Times. She's Good Times, and then
she directed Donut King?
She was, yeah. And I watched that back on a plane and I was like,
that was an unpaid endorsement once upon a time.
Right. Sorry.
It was beautiful.
This is our new dog, just showing you real quick. Sorry. On his way to bed.
What's your dog's name?
His name is Bart, like Bart Simpson.
I have a Bert.
Did you know that Bart was named Bart as an anagram for brat?
Oh, Bart is an anagram for brat.
Is Bart a brat?
Bart Simpson. Is he a brat? He's actually pretty well behaved considering we got him on Friday.
Yeah. Is this like a doodle, right?
A doodle? We think he's a mini poodle. But
yeah.
Smart then.
Yeah, he's pretty small.
Good night. Good night, Bart. Yeah, just grabbing people or that are recommended to you. And that was it's funny you say Donut King because I watched that on a plane coming back from a shoot. And I was like, this person is great. Like, maybe her work isn't all in one place and super easy to sell because she has car stuff. She has a lot of a vignette with kids. She has some extreme stuff with like Laird Hamilton and that kind of stuff. And so going like, oh, okay, this is a challenge. I want to give this person a voice of like kind of a lane.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, this Oren and that, like, it's very much like, what's your lane? Like, I'm not even going to put somebody up, even though you guys could do it, and it's like, well, it's just shooting like vignettes with like a beautiful candle burning down or whatever the hell it is. Right. And it's like, but it's
you want to put someone up that can win it against other people.
Yeah.
Of course. Even like sometimes I've like lobbied too hard, got someone in it, And then you're spending $3,500, $5,000, you know, on the treatment. And like, I've gotten halfway through a treatment with the director and gone like, oh.
Is there a scramble there? Is there a way, do you have any like tricks up your sleeve of like, oh, let's call in a writer, or like, how do we punch this up?
I mean, you do all of that stuff, but like for me, it's like relationship with the agency, you know, like that's my first thing.
Yeah.
Is establishing a relationship, because then you can ask the specific questions like, what's going to be important in this treatment? Like, what do you think your creatives want to see? And like, I missed that on a pretty recent treatment that went in. I didn't ask that question specifically, but then I'm always friendly with the agency producer by the end. And I'm like, well, what really was missing? Like, what put the thumb on the scale for the other director? And they were like, oh, he really did the portal that we were treating on. Like he spent like 5 pages in his treatment. And I was like, fuck, because I could have just asked that question.
Yeah. Why didn't you just tell us the portal's the thing?
Yeah. But like, it's really your job as the EP, and like, and that's how you learn, unfortunately, like by messing up sometimes.
Yeah. That's funny. You know, you reminded me, Oren, does this ever happen to you? I feel like there's a handful of producers now that will like call me up and they'll be like, hey, do me a solid and talk to this other director for me and just brainstorm with them so that they can win this job. Does that ever happen? Like, you and I will do that every once in a while. Like,
I do it. Like, I call director friends. I call you or Carlin or Tom or someone, and I'll be like, hey, I can't figure out, like, I need a funny moment, or Blake. Yeah. Like, and I know, you know, but I'm pretty consistently at the end of a briefing call, I'll be like, okay, so if you were writing this treatment, what would you focus on? Like, what's the thing that you think will separate the directors?
I'm saying every once in a while, they'll call me as a ringer to help someone else win the job.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Who have you done that with?
A couple people.
What crappy directors did you have to help?
I was like, wait a minute.
I had this one director, this guy, he was so awesome. He was Rob Pritz, and he still directs, but he was at Backyard when I was at Backyard. And he would define the whole job by what the other 2 directors couldn't do, right? So he would be like, he'd look at other people that were in the bid pool and go like, oh, the casting sucks. Like their casting is terrible. You know, like you're just not getting real enough people or whatever, not directing them right. And then his whole bent in his treatments and also in the pitch back would be like, this job is about casting.
The only thing that's important is whether or not you know how to cast.
Yeah. But did that work? Because I've tried that multiple times, and for me, it doesn't work because I find myself pitching against like my instinct sometimes. And it's harder to get passionate about it. And I definitely get like imposter syndrome. You know, like I just did a pitch against Martin Granger and Neil Brennan, and I think it would have been so much better if I didn't know who I was pitching against. And even knowing so, I still accidentally put 3 images in my treatment from Martin Granger work that I just did not realize was his stuff. And guess what? He got the job.
Yeah, hey, Martin, we noticed.
But I did on that job, I really tried to pitch away from him. I'm like, you know, these old guys are just like, comedy geniuses, whatever. You don't need that.
It's like when you shoot so often, you just end up repeating yourselves.
Yeah. So Martin Granger, you know, he directs all the progressive Dr. Rick commercials.
Oh, yeah. Those look great.
Ton of celebrity stuff.
Yeah.
And part of like the trademark, I think, of that campaign, which I think is probably his most famous campaign currently that's on the air, is that they're very still, right? It's kind of very kind of quiet
also,
moments.
The music cue, the piano, like the lilting, like echoey, reverby piano, like ding, ding, ding. Like is in all of them, you know?
Right. So the campaign is this guy, older guy that's like coaches people on how to not turn into their parents, right?
Yeah.
And it's really dry and really smart, like some of the best writing on TV.
Yeah. No.
So I pitched just super dynamic. I'm like, I don't want just 2 people sitting on a couch. I want, you know, this actress walking over here and this actress is super funny. Let's have her do this thing. And maybe they're exercising while they're saying the dialogue. And I was just like, you know, and then at the end, the agency's like, we loved your pitch. You're so funny. Like, it was so great. But like, this is not what this project means, you know?
You totally missed the point.
Well, it's because I was pitching away from
a 2-shot of people on a couch.
Yeah. And of course, it's like probably really funny and great.
Really funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
Even though I was trying to convince her that that's not, you know,
that's
that it could be way better.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. So are you like, I assume you're kind of always have your thumb on the pulse of what directors are out there and who's where and who's kind of like I assume you're flirting with like a lot of directors at this.
Yeah. I think we'd like to have, we're always going to look for new folks, obviously. We're always going to look for talent. It's tricky as a 1-year-old production company to get, if you're courting someone that, also Smuggler is talking to, or, even someone like Joe Jacks, is kind of like a newer, but like also kind of.
Well, who's their parent company?
Well, I mean, they're related.
Isn't their owner like someone's brother or something?
Son of Rocky Morton.
Oh, MJZ.
Yeah. So, and they're lovely. They're like the nicest guys. And so like, I love that. Like we were hanging out with them in Cannes and, I was like, okay, good times could be like that in a couple years. Right. And I've even said that, and it's like, it does take a little bit of time to figure out like who's working, what kind of work is out there to be got, like what this, like what your floor is, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to do $100,000 job or $120,000 job because I really like commercials and I came up in commercials. Like I find them like very enjoyable form of filmmaking. And I know how much it costs really and the kind of crew that you want to put on a job. And I don't want to have to ask favors on every job, like that gets exhausting. So we've said no to probably 10 jobs over the course of the first year, right? That, maybe some of my former companies wouldn't say no to. And because I don't think that sometimes you can't see a benefit. Obviously the reps are always not reps meaning the reps, but the repetitions are always good. And going through the casting process and then figuring out what a location does for the script and, locations, all of those reps are back. But if the creative is shitty, it's just like, oh my God, we're going to be selling toilet paper. And it's like, these people are not nice and they take their job way too seriously and all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, we'll pass on jobs. So
it's funny. I used to say like, and this is still mostly true, but like I'm motivated by the creative. And as long as the scope of the ambition of the work matches the budget, then there's no problem, right? Like a simple but really great idea can be lower budget. Who cares? But I feel like over the years, you learn that it's really rare that the creative is exceptional and the budget isn't. Do you know what I mean? Like
right. A lot of that lower budget stuff comes from companies that have a lot riding on that lower budget thing, and they're very afraid to take risks.
Oh yeah,
and they really want to maximize how much they get out of that shoot day, like the socials and the this thing and then that thing and the 15 and the 6 and the.
I'll say this: there are a few agencies that I think can do quality low budget work.
Yeah, Wyden and Kennedy.
Sure.
Like I used to do job after job for Wyden that were never like when they had a budget, they'd always go to LA, but I started in Portland and we'd always be like resentful. I was like, oh, they'd finally got money and we went to. But still, the creative is the king in our world, and there's plenty of stuff that is low budget, that we would do. Like I don't have a number, definitely not. That is like I won't do a $60,000 job if it's a genius idea that like matches the creative execution with their idea, and it aligns with with someone. I'm like, I'll do it. I'll drive the camera truck. I don't care. I know how to do that stuff, and I always say that too. But the reality is advertising is worse now. Like the writing in advertising is worse than it used to be. Like, I don't know what it is. I think it's part of what we were talking about before. The aesthetic is like, it's just a different aesthetic. And it's like, I love it. So a lot of times like Midwest commercials that are, CPG stuff, but it has a setup and a payoff and a button at the end of it. I get excited about those kind of boards, right? Where I'm like, this is something I want to do. So there's still a lot of that. There's less of that. Here's the other thing that's weird that I just have noticed being a young company. It's like everyone is doing everything. So it's like, what do you mean no Murrow is pitching against us? Like, what do you mean Martin Granger is in this bid pool? Like, how does he even do it? Right.
Right.
When I came up,
famous commercial directors are doing
the
same jobs that Matt and I, who are also famous commercial directors,
Very,
less
very
famous.
Very
No, but even that new directors would usually pitch on.
100%. When I came up, there was this whole B level, and I say that it's not complimentary. I understand, but backyard,
like the minor leagues.
Backyard was a very well produced, solidly B+ level company, and there's just not room for that anymore. Right? There's this level, and they take everything, and so I think it's important that you are only trying to get to that level, right? I think you're wasting your time if you're
not aiming for the top, is what you're saying. Yeah.
It's an interesting point to have longevity in this business. It helps to be at the top, and it helps to be known. And I think I'm having this realization. It's something that I think we've known and we've talked around in circles a lot, but I remember we had this era on the podcast when we interviewed a lot of indie filmmakers that were going to cool festivals like South by and Sundance. And
you got sick of it. Yeah.
No, it's not that I got sick of it. We came to this realization that to get into South by, it really helps if you've just been to South by as a guest, as a visitor multiple times.
Yeah.
You meet the festival programmers, you meet the people, you see the films there.
Yeah, the players.
Yeah. And I think just the more we talk to EPs and commercial people, and the longer I've been around. And I had this really minorly life-changing meeting with Dana Balkin.
Oh yeah,
a rep, a West Coast rep.
She's awesome.
She said to me, she's like, your work's pretty good, but no one's ever heard of you. I saw your name, I was like, I have no clue who this person is. And I have a lot of friends right now, director friends that are kind of looking to leave their company to new companies or looking for new companies, kind of circling around this commercial world. And just the more I kind of hang out in the commercial world, the more I realize that you just got to hang out in the commercial world.
Yeah.
You got to meet the EPs, you got to meet the creative directors, you got to meet other directors, the production companies. And it's not you're I'm here in LA, let's call up Good Times and we'll get signed tomorrow and let's start working. Let's start shooting next week.
It's multiple touches, right? It's like, oh, I saw this person at this party and I just saw their work, and somebody that I follow on Instagram also
reference that
or
and they made Donut King and I saw it on the airplane.
Right, exactly. I think also, Oren, you and I went to the DGA for the commercial director thing.
Was it good? I saw fun. Everyone I had on a great Instagram time. I was like, oh man,
it was really,
there's so few commercial events, specific events there that I'm kind of trying to make a point to go to all of them. There's 2 of them a year.
And we'll text I saw I've been trying to see the creative director panels and things like that.
Yeah.
Just try to get out there just to
for people to know your name.
And not just to, but also there's a little bit of community, and LA used to be a town where you could go any night of the week and be in the mix on whatever scene you wanted to be a part of.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good.
It really paid off when I was younger and was doing that all the time. Now, kids and lives and less interest or whatever. But when I got to the DGA a little bit earlier than Oren, newsflash, Enlo is earlier than Oren Kaplan to any
I actually was there so early that I left to go grab a bite and then ended up being late.
Anyway,
my superpower is to be late to anything, even if I'm early.
In years past, I could go to any event and know a few people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And this time I was like, oh, eventually, people showed up and I was like, oh, we know plenty of people in the room. It wasn't a big deal. But it reminded me to get out there. You know what I mean? And to just say hello to people. And that is, I think, the difference between oftentimes directors who are working and not is just kind of
and to being in the conversation,
being in the mix. Yeah.
I in the room. Couldn't agree more.
The Hamilton song.
I didn't see that.
In the room where it happened. There you go. Right.
I'm sorry. I didn't see it.
McCasline.
I tried.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus. It's pretty good.
Oh yeah, of course.
Before we wrap up, I know we're kind of going long here. You had mentioned before we started the recording that you had posted something on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
When we met. Matt saw what?
Yeah,
what was
and I
that
think
about?
that circles back a little bit to film in LA, right? It's difficult. I understand that it has challenges, but it is the best place in the world to shoot. I'm biased, obviously. I kind of cut my teeth here, but just the level of technician in this town, all the way from DPs to DITs or whatever it is, right? PAs, that kind of thing, are just as good as anywhere in the world. So I have a lot of joy when I can drive rather than fly to set, right? It's just so much nicer to be able to kind of do what you do close to where you live, you know? And it's cool. And for DPs and directors and EPs to be able to shoot everywhere, like you have to be flexible because like in our Starbucks job, they told us where they wanted to shoot because they wanted to go there, you know,
like
and have good food and
the city that you had to shoot in.
Yeah. We're like, oh, so tell me, where do you think you want it? Mexico City. Like all my friends are going there and the food's awesome. And like, you know,
that's where we want to go.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course I'm all for that, you know, like I like discovering a new city, and obviously Mexico City has got a full, if you want me to build something big and you got to keep it on stages for 4 or 5 days, you know, and that's just a great place to shoot, you know, because you have an army, you know, you shot there, Oren, and that, like, it's very much like you have an army of art department. It's like 65 people in your art department, you know, and they're just there all day and all night, like doing what you need to be done. But LA just, I think if they could figure something out, I think in the incentive kind of world, it would be so helpful, you know, for companies and this industry, which is kind of, you know, you think of Los Angeles and you think of the film industry, and, you know, so much of that has gone. I mean, we're not even talking about AI, right? Because like AI could really affect where shooting, or even if shooting continues, right? Like, could it be like 5 guys in a back room of good times, like directing commercials in 5 years? Could be. We don't know, you know, like, but back to the shoot in LA, I'm very, very pro shooting in LA.
Yeah. And I mean, the technicians obviously are amazing here, but the thing that you cannot even come close to anywhere else, at least for the type of content that we make, is the cast, is the actors.
Yeah.
And sure, you can fly LA actors to other places, or New York actors or Chicago actors or whatever. But if you want a cast of 10 people, you know, like, you know, I've done so many things where we fly the lead in and then everyone else is just like not a good actor.
Yeah. And like a kind of bad extra can ruin your spot. Like someone who's like too broad or something, you're just like, all right, never mind.
Yeah.
I should have made it a frog.
So sorry to bring this up, Eric, but did the LinkedIn post touch on, you lost your house, right?
Recently? No, I didn't lose my house. So
you didn't lose it.
Yeah. That was like what I wrote in that post is like, obviously I'm in limbo, but like my house is still standing. And so I've been back twice.
Is your neighborhood like just some houses are standing and some aren't?
So this is the weirdest thing. So the fire started about 500 yards from my house, and really close, up in the hills in the Santa Monica Mountains. And I'm at the top of Bienvenido, and it's called Villa Floresta up there. And the fire came down very quickly. And then the fire department rolled up. They still had all of the juice and the hydrants and all, like, they're fresh. I mean, this is 10:45, 11 o'clock when they came up our street. And they put out the fire right behind our street. And then, you know, because the winds were so powerful, that flew right over the top of us down the hill. And I thought, as I was leaving my house, I thought, oh, I lost my house. You know, like it's a bummer because I just moved to that house from another house in the Palisades a month before. And I was like, I should maybe not move around. You know, like I thought, oh, what bad luck. But I thought it was going to be 20 houses. The burnt down around the periphery.
You thought it was going to be your spot, and yeah.
And then they put it out, and then and then I'd have to find a new place to live or whatever. But like, no one was like prepared for kind of the devastation. As a matter of fact, I'm working with Steadfast LA, which is the Rick Caruso Foundation right now. And we're doing a bunch of design work and web work and like kind of that kind of stuff, because we do that as well at Good Times. Like, we have some really great, artists in that regard. So, and designers and people who do brand identity and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I've been back there a couple times, and I can't help but cry. Like, I'll come around the corner, like every time I see Alley Press, which is the Presbyterian church, it was a huge building. It was a very focal. A lot of people went there. A ton of people sent their kids for preschool, and it's just the only thing that's standing is the steeple out in front. And like, every time I see that, I just like well up, and I'm just like, oh man, it's just like Dresden there. It's just like, you'll look out over the alphabet streets and you just see like 500 chimneys like out there. Wow. And it's just so horrible. And then who knows what's going to happen in that, space. Like, it's not going to be built overnight. It's like, do we want to go back to our house? So
but your house, is it livable?
It's not livable now, but it's remediate. Like, like they'll take out all the insulation, and then they'll take out all the furniture, and they'll take out all the clothes and stuff like that.
I directed a ServPro commercial, right?
We are using ServPro right now.
They're all over the place. Yeah.
Tell him you know the guy. Maybe like
he's a super nice guy. I met them there on Saturday to do the soft goods inspection, and it was like, still smells like a campfire was lit inside your house, even a month later. But, and the pool's black. It's just like,
Wow. I imagine it's kind of nice to be that the business is going well, like from just like an emotional standpoint.
Once I found a place with an office, I was like, oh God, because working out of like people, like Airbnbs and stuff like that, but and that's why we actually moved to the new house, was I had an office by me. I wasn't out in the middle of the living room when everyone came home from school, like yelling at them to be quiet. I'm on a call, that kind of thing. So
we're really excited about toilet paper. This is like, it's my favorite thing.
Scrubbing bubbles and toilet paper is a great marriage.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, so many people, the funny things, like I said, we did that scrubbing bubbles job. Anna Ferris is in it. She lost her house. Mm-hmm. Billy, our AD, had lost his house. I was evacuated. There's probably 6, 7 people. We lost our whole art department, who was from Altadena. They had all lost their homes. And so we had to like use Arnie in the middle of our job. We ported him over, and
I'm working with him too.
Yeah, he did a great job on this. So like, especially given that he only had a week and a half to kind of put together a big build. It was like bathrooms, it was offices, it was like all sorts of stuff. I'm like, he couldn't have come through any better.
Yeah.
Like, the agency and client were super happy.
Well, and I think that like maybe part of what this LinkedIn post really, I think, resonated with people was, I think you make the point of like how even after all of these terrible fires, and people are still in the middle of dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
Like a little bit of normalcy to come in and shoot a job, practice the crafts that we all have dedicated ourselves to, and how healing that must have been, right?
Yeah. It's a stress, obviously. Like any job, any shoot day is a bunch of stress, right? Oh, are we going to make our day? Are we going to be able to move on out of this setup? Are we going to be able to like, oh, did we get the right, technician for this or that, right? But that's like such a familiar stress, right? Mm-hmm. We've all been doing it for so long that like wondering, like reassuring an agency producer, no, don't worry. I'm not going to come to you in 6 hours and ask for overtime. Mm-hmm. I understand he wanted an extra shot here, but we're going to make our day. That kind of stuff that we've all done, hundreds of times is like so like, a strange way comforting, right? That you're able to do that and go back in. That's what, I mean, I don't know if I can say this yet because the spot's not out yet, but Anna Faris was very much like, thank you for continuing on and doing this by her. She lost her house, but she was able to come and act and do what she does and be paid for it, obviously. And she, like, at the end, she gave me a huge hug, like, and I was like, oh, that's unusual. But like, she was clearly like, affected by us carrying on and finishing the spot, because they easily could have like then just canceled or called and we did it, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what we know. It's all I know. Like, I've been on plenty of sets, like at midnight or whatever. And like, is it too late for law school? But
I don't know how many lawyers you know, Eric. I don't know any happy ones. Sorry.
Yeah, there is so much joy.
There are a lot of wealthy ones.
Yeah, they'll be happier later in life.
Maybe.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Isn't your sister-in-law a lawyer?
Hi, Jenny.
Well, cool. Well, if people want to find out more about Good Times, the website is itsgoodtimes.com,
It's good
right?
times. Yeah, it's goodtimes.com.
But it's is like such a frustrating word because like you hear the instinct is always to put that apostrophe in, and a lot of times it doesn't even need the apostrophe, but it does in this case.
It is.
Yeah.
Except not in your URL.
Not in my URL. The person who had Good Times was a wedding photographer in Sacramento.
Oh, shout out. Probably went to high school with me.
So they had brokered it, right? Because they had it for, 20 years. They don't even have a wedding photography business anymore. But they were like, $1 million. And we're like, what else? It's like, hello, Good Times, or like whatever you do to make the URL. Yeah, no. So it's Good Times, and we have 10-ish directors. We'll probably stop at about 12, but it's always good to our aim is always to have one job a month for everybody, which it is not always the case. And
so you want to do 120 jobs this year.
Yeah, I know. And if we do half of that, we'll be in great shape. You know what I'm saying?
Good times.
Yeah, it's good times. Bonnie and Allison have been busy the whole time we've been around. So that's always been good, kind of a good anchor for us. And yeah, we're just always looking for folks. It's cool. Talented people.
Awesome. Well, Eric, do you have a few more moments to hang out and endorse with us?
Yeah, of course.
Unpaid endorsements.
So my unpaid endorsement, I've got two, which is rare. Normally I'm just searching for them. But as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, Oren and I went to the DGA commercial event. Thanks, Oren. One of the commercial directors there was a director named Kim Garrick, who's I've admired for a long time, but hadn't really connected the dots of how much of her work I love and that it was all her. And she's in this class of director that I've admired my whole life since I loved commercials, like that just intensely cinematic, intensely polished, poetic, smart, operatic, just big commercials, just the coolest commercials, but always clever and always humanistic in a way that Mike Mills, I would put in this category as well. Just these people that do something that I don't aim to do ever. And I don't think I could on their level, but just love so much. So do yourself a favor and just scroll through her website. It's just A+ blockbuster material in 60 seconds over and over again. It's such incredible work. It's really awesome. If you're I don't know if commercials are art or not, check yourself. Kim Garrick.
Do you know that this Super Bowl was the first Super Bowl commercial she's ever had?
Really?
Which one was hers?
It's a Nike spot.
Oh yeah, that one is so good. The so win or something.
Yeah.
The Willem Dafoe one, the one she was.
No, that was last year's. She was nominated for 24, so she had a new one.
Gotcha.
I know, in 25. But yeah, it's Gehrig, Gehrig, and I've see her everywhere because our kids are the same age and we live in the same neighborhood.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, but I've never one time I was like, hey,
she
literally after I'd seen her 30 times, I'm like, hey, are you Kim? And she's like, yeah. I'm Oren. I've seen you, speak and stuff. She's like, cool. And then the conversation ended. So
cool. That's fine. Yeah.
I've just creeped on her.
I have plenty of friends. I don't need another. It's fine.
Yeah.
I like that.
She wasn't mean at all. She was just very nice, but also I didn't know where to go from there.
Yeah.
I was hoping she would ask me about
you were
my background and she didn't.
I hate you. Do you hate me? That's Willem Dafoe. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
yeah. Really good.
Thank you.
What else you got?
A video essay from a creator named Patrick Tommaso.
Oh, come on. Is it about how movies look?
Why don't movies look like movies anymore? Did I just scoop you?
You didn't scoop me, but everyone is like so into this video.
Yeah.
Is it really? What is it good?
It's good.
I think it's like it's like so subjective in a way where he kind of comes off as like making it seem objective. Like he's figured out why movies don't look good anymore. And it's like, there used to be contrast and now there's no contrast.
You boiled it down to, yes, like Spielberg clips his windows and like let your blacks go like a little inkier. 100% that is right. But he also outlines like, oh, with higher sensor sensitivity, you can get more detail. And like, I think if you walk away, the takeaway being like, it's okay. Just because you can shoot detail doesn't mean that you should always retain all that detail is a very good lesson to be reminded of. Because, you know, I think we're a generation where as camera sensors got better, we got really excited about
the detail in the shadows and the detail in the highlights.
Yeah. And I like a clipped window for sure. And had to like, I don't know, unlearn that for myself. And it was just validating to be like, yeah, let your shadows follow black. It's cool.
I thought his other kind of interesting point is that green screen, that, you know, CG and green screen is so ubiquitous nowadays that people light it a little flat to give kind of some flexibility in post. And then he talked about that, right? Was that video?
I think so. Yeah.
And so you're just like not, back in the day, people would walk into sources of light or just kind of just have a much more dramatic, light would just be much more dramatic. And he used this as like opening salvo, like the movie Parent Trap.
Which I watched recently and is
and how beautiful that it's just like really a family comedy and how beautiful it is compared to today's.
It's Nancy Meyer's first directorial movie as well. And
she's like, all right.
She's all
Dave
right.
Cundy, John Cundy. What's this?
Oh yeah, he shot
all the Carpenter movies and stuff. I was like, oh yeah, it's sick. It's sick. Anyway, those are my two endorsements. I guess one of them is not very good.
Sorry, no, it is good. I'm just obviously I made that video today. All these people today were telling me about it, and I just was like, is this worthy of telling me about? Okay, anyway,
I thought so.
Well, there's 1,000 videos about this topic on YouTube. I didn't know why this one stood
it's
out.
what I do to all my pictures. I just crush the blacks and put a vignette on it.
Yeah,
and everyone thinks you're a good photographer.
Yeah, that was Instagram 101 back in the day, right?
But not to the Instagram kind of filter level. Sure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just all you have to do is a little bit. And I learned that from Mark Gethin, who is a colorist at MPC and now is at Traffic. And I would just sit in there when I was a producer at MPC for 3-5 years, somewhere like that, somewhere in the middle of my career. And I would just sit in here because he was also a lovely dude, right? But and I just watched what he was doing with like the images, and that was when it was all on film. So big part of a project was coming in with the film and transferring it, and then kind of like working in whatever it was, Basslight or whatever it was, and then putting it back onto the kind of a film back process. But you watch like Sunset Boulevard or whatever, and like you're like, holy hell! Like just like the blocking and all the stuff. It's just like you say, walking into pools of light, or like letting like the light direct your eye around a frame is like something that's
only done in horror films now.
Isn't done really anymore.
But they used to do it in the Parent Trap.
Well, you know who did it? When he was a DP and now still kind of does it is Lance Accord.
Sure.
Like if you look at his stuff, it's very kind of like, I remember when he was you're really early in his career, he was very much like, he really knew how to light a set.
Yeah.
And he stayed with that.
Also, I would say I always credit Lance Accord as the DP because he shot Being John Malkovich. He would let the blacks get crushed down, but then kind of like let them go milky. So there still wasn't a ton of detail in them, but they almost were like a little green, a little tinted. Like,
oh, yeah.
And I really love that look. Yeah. Yeah, it's an all-time favorite. Eric, what you got, buddy?
What am I into right now? What would I you a shout out. I mean, like, I'm all on board with this rebuilding LA thing when there's a million things going on right now. With the one thing that I am involved in is Steadfast LA, which is a kind of a Rick Caruso thing about infrastructure, building back better. I have a really good friend, Dustin Bramall, who's doing an architectural digest series that is going to be building back smarter kind of thing. And it will be something of arts and architecture's case study program that they did in mid-century, but it will be kind of a new case study that will be about kind of more permanent architecture and building structures in a different way. So like, as much as I love, film production, I've gotten pulled just because of the fires so much out of that, into kind of these other kind of interesting places. I mean, there's a lot of sadness about people losing, like Dustin sent me a picture on the weekend that was his grandmother's ring that they found in the rubble of his house, right? And he had this perfect mid-century modern house, along Chautauqua, and it's gone now. But like, so yeah, they got something that I'm into right now. I just reread. Either of you ever read After the End of Art?
No.
It's Arthur Danto, and it's something I read way back when I was, I did art history in college, and it's about Andy Warhol.
That's what you do when you go to read, right?
Yeah.
You take calligraphy class. And
exactly. Something that's totally unusable, once you graduate. Like, you can go to 8 more years of school and do something with it, but you certainly can't do it as a new graduate from Reed College. And then it's about Andy Warhol, and it's about kind of pop art, but like there's a real good section in it that's about sampling, right? Which is so much about where we are in our art forms now, right? It's all sampling. And I did my thesis or whatever on Beck, when I was in college, but it's not just audio samples. It is, our whole life is kind of sampley, and it's getting more so, right? If you think about AI and where we're going with that kind of thing, it's getting really meta. Like if you're thinking about kind of the future of art. And yeah, so I just read Arthur Danto's After the End of Art, which is something I would recommend for sure. It's an easy read.
Cool.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of sampling, I don't know if this is a cool endorsement or not, but I've been, I work with storyboard artists to do storyboards. I think I will for the foreseeable future. I mean, I also do photo boards or other things, but usually you need to draw things when you have very specific looks of actors, specific props, things you're building that don't exist yet. But a lot of times you have to modify them really fast. And like, oh, can you add this character, and can you change their arm position, and can they take off their glasses or whatever? And I've found that, if you have a nicely drawn storyboard frame in Photoshop and you need to change, a parrot into a rabbit, and you just kind of outline the parrot and say generative AI, the rabbit, it does a pretty decent job of matching the storyboard style. Yeah. So you can just kind of make really quick edits instead of like
removing schedule time is a perfect example. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And then I even I did in Midjourney, you can say, imagine a film still of something, but you can also say, imagine a storyboard, a black and white storyboard frame, hand drawn of this rabbit. And then I can take that rabbit and put it in Photoshop and kind of comp it. And I also use it a lot if I want to make an animatic, because I'll get my frame from my storyboard artist, but I want to remove the arms from my character so I can animate them. So I need to fill in what's left over. And I find the generative AI does a much better job than like content aware fill or like the old ways I did it. So I think it's like I'm using it in just to kind of augment storyboards in a fun way. Still kind of working with the storyboard artist for the main thing, but just to tweak. And then the other thing, yesterday I went to the Super Bowl party, like I mentioned, and it was a fancy party. They had like a taco person making bespoke tacos and a beautiful cheese scape or whatever you call it, like a table scape. And I brought some Cool Ranch Doritos, like party size. And I mean, those things were eaten in like 1
off the shelf.
millisecond.
Doritos are great.
You cannot underestimate how great, if you are just really struggling thinking of what to bring to a party, everyone's going to bring wine. Like you bring your $15 wine and there's like $20, $40 bottles of wine in line in front of you.
I still have bottles from you from like my Christmas party in my cupboard or whatever.
Sorry. But if you bring a freaking Cool Ranch Doritos,
they'll go.
People will love them. Kids love them. Adults love them. People that haven't tasted them in 20 years are like, oh, I forgot how good these are. So
Cool Ranch
Doritos.
I love that. Also,
weird endorsement.
It's a weird endorsement, but like the last time I had Cool Ranch Doritos was on set. I only eat them on set. So if someone rolled up with them,
right, and kind of like a lower budget set where they buy the box of of chips.
I want them on the big budgets too, though. Actually,
that's in your rider.
My set food.
Yeah.
Have you ever had the Thai flavored ones? They're in the pearl bag.
No,
they're not the Dynamito ones or whatever they're.
No, I don't know. These are like specifically like Thai chili with like a little bit of lime. Good.
Cool. Well, Eric, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Finally.
No, thanks for having me.
We made it happen. Congrats on the company. And if you guys have any thoughts on what Eric said, if you want us to forward your resume to him and all your reels, you can email us at justshootitpod@gmail.com.
Awesome.
You can find us across all social media at justshootitpod. And I'm on Instagram at @okaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Enlow. This episode was edited by Kevin O. Yang. Thanks, Kevin. And produced by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist, Jazar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.